A single paralyzed girl was little sad when not a single dad sitting in cafe was enjoying his meal. The coffee shop fell silent as her wheelchair knocked against his table, spilling his coffee across the papers he'd been grading all morning. But what happened next would change both their lives forever. "Can I share this table?" she asked, her voice barely audible above the cafe chatter. Her hands trembled slightly on her wheelchair controls, eyes darting nervously to the crowded room where not a single empty table remained. Jake looked up, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. 3 jobs, a 7-year-old daughter waiting at school, and now coffee soaking through 30 ungraded essays. He opened his mouth, ready to say no, until he saw something in her eyes that stopped him cold. "Actually," he said, quickly gathering his damp papers, "I could use the company." What Jake didn't know was that Melissa had spent 2 years avoiding public places since the accident. What Melissa couldn't have guessed was that Jake hadn't spoken to another adult outside of work since his wife walked out. And neither of them could have possibly imagined what would happen when his daughter Emma arrived at the cafe an hour later. The first time Emma saw Melissa's wheelchair, she asked the question that made everyone freeze. But Melissa's answer would become the foundation of something none of them were looking for. "My dad says you can't walk because you're brave," Emma announced, climbing onto the chair between them. "Are you gonna be my new mom?" Jake nearly choked on his second coffee. "Emma. That's not, I never said." "It's okay," Melissa laughed, the sound surprising even herself. "Your dad's right about one thing. Being brave isn't about what you can do, it's about what you try to do even when you're scared." As weeks turned to months, their coffee meetings became dinner invitations. But not everyone supported their growing connection. Jake's former mother-in-law was determined to gain custody of Emma, claiming Jake's new lifestyle choices were disrupting her granddaughter's stability. The custody battle threatened everything they were building together. "You don't need this," Jake whispered one night after Emma had fallen asleep between them on the couch. "My life is a mess. You deserve." "Don't you dare tell me what I deserve," Melissa interrupted, tears streaming down her face. "For 2 years, I've been existing, not living. You and Emma gave me back something I thought was gone forever. Don't you understand? I'm not here despite your mess. I'm here because in your mess, I found my courage again." The day of the custody hearing arrived with storm clouds gathering. As Jake helped Melissa from the car, her wheelchair caught on the curb, nearly toppling them both. In that moment of vulnerability, with rain beginning to fall, he made a decision. "Whatever happens in there," he said, his voice breaking as he knelt before her, "I need you to know that you rolled into my life and showed me how to stand tall again." The judge's decision would test everything they believed about family, about fairness, and about fighting for love against impossible odds. What happened in that courtroom would become the stuff of local legend. Jake's former mother-in-law, Vivian, had arrived with a high-powered attorney and a 20-page document outlining Jake's inadequacies as a father. The list included his irregular work hours, modest apartment, and, most damning in her eyes, his relationship with a disabled woman who couldn't possibly help raise an active child. When Melissa heard those words, something inside her shattered and reformed. She wheeled herself forward, ignoring the bailiff's warning. "Your Honor," she said, her voice stronger than Jake had ever heard it, "may I speak?" The judge, a stern woman with silver-streaked hair, studied Melissa for a long moment before nodding. 2 years ago, I was a marathon runner training for the Olympics," Melissa began, her words echoing through the hushed courtroom. "One rainy night changed everything. I lost my legs, but worse, I lost my purpose. For months, I couldn't look at children without breaking down, knowing I'd never have my own family." She turned to look at Emma, who was sitting quietly beside a court-appointed guardian. "Then this little girl asked if I was going to be her new mom, and for the first time since my accident, I felt something besides loss. Do you know what Emma and I did last weekend, Your Honor? We baked cookies for her class. I can't stand at a counter, but I taught her how to measure flour while sitting down. I can't run alongside her bike, but I've shown her how to be brave when she falls." Melissa's voice broke as she continued, "Jake works 3 jobs because he refuses child support from a woman who abandoned her daughter. He grades papers until midnight so he can spend afternoons in the park with Emma. And yes, he loves someone who uses a wheelchair, someone who has shown his daughter that different doesn't mean less." The courtroom remained silent when she finished. Even Vivian seemed stunned. The judge removed her glasses, pinching the bridge of her nose. "In my 30 years on the bench," she finally said, "I've rarely seen such clear evidence of what makes a family. Mr. Thompson will retain full custody of Emma. And Ms. Reynolds," the judge looked directly at Melissa, "I hope you'll continue being exactly the role model that child needs." Outside the courthouse, as rain gave way to unexpected sunshine, Emma launched herself into Melissa's lap, nearly tipping the wheelchair backward. Jake caught them both, his arms encircling the 2 people who had become his world. "Does this mean we can be a real family now?" Emma asked, her small fingers intertwining with Melissa's. 6 months later, Jake proposed in that same coffee shop where they'd first met, getting down on one knee beside her wheelchair while Emma held the ring. "You spilled my coffee and reorganized my heart," he said, voice thick with emotion. "Will you marry us?" Our wedding day wasn't what most people would call traditional. I wore a dress designed to flow beautifully around my wheelchair, with Emma as our flower girl scattering petals along a path wide enough for my wheels. Jake waited at the altar we'd set up in his school's gymnasium, the same school where he'd been teaching when we met. But the biggest surprise came moments before the ceremony began. A familiar figure appeared at the back of the room, hesitating by the door. "Mom?" Emma whispered, spotting her first. Cynthia, Jake's ex-wife, stood awkwardly clutching a small gift. She disappeared 3 years earlier, leaving nothing but a note saying motherhood had been too much, too soon. Her sudden reappearance threatened to shatter our perfect day. Jake's face drained of color as he approached her. "Why are you here?" he asked, his voice barely controlled. "I saw the announcement in the paper," she said, eyes darting between Jake and me. I wanted to see her. And to meet the woman who did what I couldn't." The room held its breath as I wheeled myself forward. This was the woman who had abandoned the little girl who now called me Mom. The woman whose absence had created the empty space I now filled. I should have hated her. "Thank you for coming," I said instead, surprising everyone, including myself. "Emma has your smile." Later that night, after Cynthia had left with a promise to write occasionally, Jake found me on the dance floor. The DJ had played a slow song, and Jake had lifted me from my chair to sway together, my arms around his neck, his hands supporting my weight. "You amaze me," he whispered against my hair. "You could have sent her away." "Family isn't always what we expect," I replied. "Emma deserves to know her mother, even if just through letters. Besides," I added with a smile, "I'm secure enough in who we are to not feel threatened." Our journey hasn't been without challenges. There are days when my body betrays me, when the phantom pain becomes unbearable. There are nights when Emma still wakes crying for a mother who chose to leave. And there are moments when Jake still doubts he deserves happiness. But there are also mornings when Emma helps me into my chair with practiced ease before climbing onto my lap for wheelchair races down the hallway. There are evenings when Jake returns from work to find dinner ready, prepared from my adapted kitchen. And there are countless ordinary moments that, strung together, create an extraordinary life. Today, sitting in our home surrounded by photos of the life we've built, I still remember that rainy day and the words that changed everything. Sometimes the strongest families aren't the ones we're born into, but the ones we create when we're brave enough to say yes to sharing a table with a stranger. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to see more stories about finding love and family in unexpected places. I'd love to know which country you're watching from. Drop it in the comments below.